I'm thrilled to be joined today by Ian Baker-Finch, the 1991 Open champion, former top 10 ranked player in the world, and longtime familiar presence in golf television. Ian, great to see you.
Thanks very much, Chris. Good to see you again, too. I hope you're doing well.
Everything's good here. Thank you so much. We really appreciate you joining us today on Questions for Cancer Research. I've been very fortunate to have played golf with you a few times. It's awesome to have the opportunity to catch up today. You're one of the all-time great putters and a guru on the topic. We've got a few putting-related questions for you today, as well as a few other questions related to some of the important things going on in the game today. Here we go.
Okay.
Ian, Jordan Spieth had a tough year in 2024 as he played through a wrist injury, which was recently surgically repaired. We wish Jordan all the best as he recovers. Ian, when we think about Jordan, fans intuitively associate him as being one of the great putters in the game. However, that part of his game has declined in recent years. He finished 93rd in strokes gained putting this year, and his rankings over the preceding years were 79th, 155th, 33rd, and 105th. As a Jordan Spieth fan, it's become somewhat stressful watching him stand over 3 to 4 footers, at times looking at the hole and other times looking at the ball. Ian, what's going on with Jordan's putting these days?
I would say that there's a lot of scar tissue has built up. You just mentioned his last 5 years, 105, 33, 155, 79, and then 93rd this year. It's hard to be, when you're holding putts and you're confident, you feel like you're never going to miss. And even when you do, it's not a big deal because you go make the next one. So it's a totally different mindset. To be a good putter, you have to be confident. Sometimes to be confident, you have to trick your mind, and you have to sometimes play games with yourself and sometimes get through that barrier of disbelief. Maybe think of the last putt of this particular length that you hold. Think of all of the good things that you've done with your putting. Think about holding the putt, see the ball going in. There's so many aspects of putting that I could pass along. Just read a book written by Bob Rotella, and you'll get a lot of some great positive thoughts to make you a better putter, better golfer. He's a magician. His books are like my Bibles. They travel with me everywhere. So get hold of one of those, and that will help. But I think when you're putting poorly, it's very hard to believe in yourself. It's very hard to see the ball going in. You watch guys, well, I watch guys regularly on CBS and on the telecasts on the weekends. I can tell the ones that are believing in themselves and the ones that aren't. You can see by their demeanor, by their approach to the putt, sometimes by the amount of time spent over the putt. There's lots of different ways you can tell. I often make comment about certain grip styles and how people look when they're over the putt and how they'll be adjusting their hands, trying to get comfortable. But a good putter has a consistent routine, steps up to the putt in a confident manner, and always looks like he's going to hold it. When you are holding them, as I said, you accept the ones that miss, because you know that's just, putting's not a science. There's irregularities in the greens. Maybe you're not reading them correctly. With Jordan, I just think he's not as comfortable over the putts. He's not trusting himself as much as he did. And he actually, considering his wrist injury, I actually thought he hit the ball quite well this year. I thought he played quite well. Putting was average, as you said, 93rd out of about 210, I think, are in those statistics, each one. So self-belief, play a little bit better, don't put quite as much demand on the putting stroke, I would say, is what he needs to do. And he's not alone. He's, I think, just because of his great years, say 15 through 19, he holed a lot of putts, and he was brilliant from 15 to 25 feet. I think he was holding like 20% of those putts at one point, maybe more. It was astronomical. So we're just sort of surprised that he's not doing that, because we were used to seeing him do it for so long. And bear in mind now as well that he's if he's not 30 yet, he's certainly approaching 30. So he's getting a little older. You tend to have a little bit more negative scar tissue build up the older you get. Very rarely do you see good putters in their 40s or 50s. They're unique on the Champions Tour, the good putters. So I don't believe Jordan Spieth is going anywhere. I think once he gets a little more confidence with his wrist and knows he can practice as hard again and spend as much time on the game, I think he'll be back. Whether he gets back to that brilliance of the three majors from 15 through 17, I'm not sure that will happen. That may have been his best run, but I still think Jordan Spieth will make President's Cup and Ryder Cup teams in the future.
Yeah, no, he's such a popular figure. I mean, we really hope he gets back there playing well. I'll just add, without looking at any official statistics and just from what I see on TV, it's always hard to say someone's the best, but I don't think I've seen anyone on tour these days chip the ball better than Jordan. Is he possibly the best chipper of the ball on the tour?
Top 10 for sure, definitely. Top 5 probably. Pretty hard to beat Scotty Scheffler.
That's true.
At anything. He at anything. I think he was number one in, well, more than 50 statistics or 50 categories this year. More importantly, the number one statistic to me as a professional golfer is he won $62 million this year. And when I got into professional golf, it was to make a living. I never thought about 62 million. I was thinking more like 62,000. But that's these guys are playing for so much money now. They're practicing hard. They have great teams around them, wonderful coaching. Just amazing the trickle down effect in the game of golf now with the amount of money that's in the game. Jordan, yes, brilliant around the greens, but there's so many out there that are equal to that as well.
Yeah. Okay, great. Let's talk about a fellow Aussie. Adam Scott has always been considered an elite ball striker with one of the best swings in the history of the game. He's had a wonderful career with 14 tour victories, including a Masters and Players Championship, plus 11 European Tour wins. I think it's surprising, though, that he's only won a single major. At age 44, it's certainly possible that he may win more. Ian, you know Adam's game as well as anyone. Has it been putting which has prevented him from winning more majors?
I would have to say yes, because it always seems to be his frailty, doesn't it? It always looks like, hey, he's got the most beautiful swing in the game, or certainly top 5. His wonderful demeanor on the course. He's a great role model, as is someone like Scotty Scheffler. Yeah. I don't think Adam reads the greens very well. I think that could be a part of his problem. And at 44, he has a lot of scar tissue, a lot of missed putts. I think a little bit of tension creeps into his putting stroke towards the end of the round or end of the tournament, a little more than, say, Thursday. I think Sunday afternoon, there's a bit more. I've noticed that at times. Certainly at the Open Championship about 10 years ago, when he had a chance to win at, I think it was Lytham against Ernie. He missed a couple of putts coming in, and I could see the tension in his stroke. But when he putts well, he putts as well as anybody. One of those things, isn't it? Once again, when you're confident and you're holding putts, you can continue to hold putts. But there's something holding him back. And it's strange for me to say that when he's had such a wonderful career for 22 years or more of playing in every major. Once again this year, making it to the Tour Championship and performing well. So there's not many things that Adam Scott doesn't do really, really well. He's one of the best players of all time, former number 1 in the world, major champion, first Australian to win the Masters back in 2013. So it's very hard for anyone to pick frailties, issues in someone's game that's had such a storied career. But if you had to say something, you would say it was that. But he never stops trying, and he tries everything. He's become comfortable with the lab putter, the long lab putter that he's using. Many players on tour now are using that because of him, and Lucas Glover, who did so well last year using it. So I think he'll continue to play well. Whether or not he plays 6 more years and then does Champions Tour golf, I'm not sure. I think he might stay home with the kids at that point. But he's had a pretty good career, hasn't he, for someone that is, say, average at best at putting.
Yeah, he's had an amazing career, and you know, you would know as well as anyone. I mean, he looks like one of the nicer people that's ever played on the PGA Tour for sure. He's just a really good person.
Yes, genuinely good guy.
Yeah. You know, it's funny. There used to be a little bit of a joke several years ago that Adam had the best swing in the game, which was a replica of Tiger's original swing before Tiger went through a series of swing changes. They were both coached at times by Butch Harmon. Do you think Adam's swing was modeled after Tiger's or just coincidence?
Just coincidence. I think Adam learnt the game from his dad, Phil. I know them well. They live in the same area. When I won the Open Championship in '91, Adam won the Junior Championship at our club when he was an 11-year-old. And Phil was a golf pro, my age, taught him his swing. He went to UNLV for a season and got to work with Butch. Butch was sort of the keeper of the swing when Adam was away from his dad. I'm sure he played quite a lot of golf with Tiger and watched Tiger as a young man at UNLV and as he started out on tour. But Adam already had that swing, just a beautiful rhythm and timing and a rotation of the forearms. You know, for not a big guy when he first started out, he was very fit, of course, but not heavy at all. But he could still hit the ball a long way because of that swing that he'd learned from a young man. So I don't credit Butch for Adam's swing, although he enhanced what he had already been taught early on.
Yeah. Okay. Ian, let's talk a little bit about Greg Norman. You're both from Queensland, Australia, with Greg being 6 years older. Can you tell us about your relationship with Greg growing up, earlier in your career, and the state of your relationship with Greg today?
Greg was the guy we all wanted to be when we were kids. As you said, he won. I was 15, he was 21 when he won his first big tournament in Australia, the West Lakes Classic, 1976. And he went on to strength from there. He won in Europe in 77. I think he won a tournament in Japan maybe that next year. Continued to play extremely good golf, excuse me, throughout the start of his career as I was attempting to become a professional. I left home at the age of 15 to be an assistant pro at a club, and all of the assistant pros, trainee pros, we were called then, were trying to emulate Greg. We did everything we could to be. Greg was our guiding star as someone, 6 years older than me, 4 or 5 years older than some of the other guys. He was brilliant, and we had an opportunity through the 80s to play a lot of golf together, and it was always a great test to play with Greg to see if you could perform as well as him, see how you stacked up against him, because he was our role model. He was different in a lot of ways because he always wanted to be number one. He always wanted to be the best. He did everything he could possibly be to do that. Most of us playing in his jet stream were just happy to be out there playing, earning a living, winning occasionally. Certainly, I had never had any aspirations at all to be number one in the world. At that point, early on in my career, I was just happy to be a golf pro playing the tour and hopefully one day playing a major. So when I finally got to play in a major, I led for 3 days and nearly won it, the Open Championship in '84. And I thought, oh shit, maybe I can play this game a little better than I thought. And I changed my my desire levels to win rather than just to perform, to play, to make a living. But I was on a few teams representing Australia with Greg. Once again, played a lot of golf with him. Late 80s, early 90s around the world. He was number one, for over 350 weeks, right? So a long time. But for 10 years, 12 years, he was 1, 2, or 3 in the world. He was an exceptionally talented great player. And I think he always felt that the great players should have been rewarded more, and that quite often he felt that other players were riding on his coattails, hence the desire to start the world tour back in the early 90s and just get the top 20, 30, 50 players play together in sort of a made-for-TV style tour, world tour. Back in those days, the money wasn't anywhere near the same. You know, it was a 10th or a 20th even of what it is now. So $1 million tournament was a big tournament in 1990, for example. And if you look back in 1994, there were two players, Tom Kite and Greg Norman, who had won $7 million in their entire career. So Greg had been playing for 18 years. He was number one in the world for 10 of them, and he'd only won $7 million. There was about 15 guys on tour this year won $7 million or more. So that's the difference in the money. And I think he had this idea through Mark McCormick and IMG to do something about that and get all the great players together. Bernard, Seve, Sandy, Nick, Nick Price, you know, all of the guys that had, Elke, that were great players, maybe myself there for a while, and have them travel the world and play. He had a friend in Fox Sports or Fox News in Australia, and then over here that David Hill, who suggested that maybe they would sponsor it and televise it. So he had an idea that I think for many years he sort of blamed the PGA Tour for stealing with their World Golf Championship events. And hence today, here we are with, you know, LIV disrupting the world of golf and Greg right at the head of it. He's sort of been boiling over, if you will, for all of those years, trying to figure out a way that he could enhance the playing and paying opportunities for the great players, the top players in the world, and that's what's happened with LIV. So he's done a good job of what he thought would be better for the game. The jury's still out on whether or not it is, in fact, better for the game. I personally don't believe it is, but we'll see how it plays out. I think there's a place for it. I mean, if we go delve deeper into this, I think there's a place for LIV golf. You know, let the LIV players play their, you know, 50, 54 players playing in a tour of 54 hole events around the world, 14 events a year. Kind of similar to a Formula One style tour that just travels around. Everyone jumps on the plane and they fly to the next place. So I don't see that as a bad thing necessarily. Just the rift it's created between PGA Tour, DP World Tour, now the LIV Tour, and in fact all of the tours around the world. You know, I'm on the board of the Australasian PGA Tour, and I'm seeing the ramifications of all of this over the last 3 years. You know, from a high position there. So no one really knows how it's going to play out, but you know that Greg will do everything he possibly can to make it work. And he really, I don't think, cares about the state of the game as he's doing this. But perhaps in the back of his mind, he feels like if he makes this all work, that it will be better for the game. I just can't wrap my head around that, for example.
Yeah, you know, I don't know if you go back 6 or 7 months ago, there was a fair amount of animosity, and, you know, some tour players and certainly felt like, hey, if we're going to move forward, you know, Greg's got to be out and LIV. It's just, we think he's too divisive. There's too much bad blood to really move forward. We think he's got to step aside. Has that somewhat softened over the last few months that, hey, maybe, you know, Greg is going to be a long time part of this?
Yeah, I think so. I think the players have stopped pointing fingers and just trying to figure out a way. You know, I've got all of those guys on the board now, PGA Tour Enterprises and the new structure. Hopefully they can find a way forward where I think the word merger is not the right word, because I don't see the two products being able to merge. Whether the PGA Tour will be funded in some way by the PIF with $1.5 billion they're talking about, whether that happens, whether the Department of Justice allows it to happen, whether it happens, in fact, even might take another couple of years before that happens, even if it is in the works, as they say. The tours still won't merge. What we really want is all the players playing the majors, all of the players in both tours, all the top players in the world playing the majors, playing in the President's Cup, playing in the Ryder Cup, and then eventually perhaps a series of events like the Rolex series on the DP World Tour, where they can all get together and play 10 tournaments around the world somewhere in 72 holes in proper championship golf style. I think that's probably the best way those two tours can merge, in a way that they'll still be playing, real golf, 72 holes, championship style, a cut on Friday, all of the right things that has made this game so great. And the LIV Tour, 14 events around the world as its own little tour, continues, and the PGA Tour continues, and the DP World Tour continues, and all of the tours around the world, Japan, Australia, South Africa, they continue as they are, but they have an opportunity for all of them to get together at a higher level tour of specialty events that are also a part of the tours wherever they may go and play, like an Australian PGA Championship, for example, or a Japan Open, or the tournaments. I think there's a big Dunhill tournament in South Africa. That those style of events maybe get them all together around the world to compete, but not take anything away from the other tours or their structures.
Yeah, I guess there were some reports this week. The Tigers in New York this week, meeting with Piff and maybe some others and trying to iron some things out. I mean, and obviously they're trying very hard. I think one of the biggest stumbling blocks will always be, hey, we didn't leave the PGA Tour and sign for 50, 100, 200, 300 million dollars. You guys did. That's an awfully tough wrinkle to try and smooth out, amongst the two sides. I mean, obviously they're trying to figure that out, whether or not there's penalties involved or some sort of additional bonuses played to tour players. I don't know, but boy, that's still an awfully big sticking point, isn't it?
Yeah, and I don't even really want to go there because I have no idea how they do, untangle, I guess, that whole aspect of it. And I think they could have chosen a better date for the meeting in New York, by the way. I think that was a little no thought given, which seems to be a popular trait with these negotiations. But anyway, that being said, I'm not sure how they figure out a way to penalise those that left, or if in fact, we take the Rory route where there's no penalty, we just all hug each other and sing Kumbaya and, let bygones be bygones. I think that might be a better way out, to be honest.
Yeah, no, I we'll leave it at that. I'll agree with you. I was a New Yorker, and a 9/11. I was in New York, and certainly knew a fair amount of people in the tower. So that was not great timing. But
No.
we'll see what news comes out possibly in the next week or so, or a work in progress. It's certainly not easy to iron all that out. We'll get moving here. Ian, Jack and Tiger have clearly distinguished themselves from all other players in the history of the game, with Jack winning 18 majors and 73 tour victories, and Tiger with 15 and 82. We've seen players go on some great short-term runs in recent years that were not sustained, including Rory, Jordan Spieth, Justin Thomas, Jason Day, Brooks Koepka, and Dustin Johnson. We've been taught to never say never, but it's hard to envision any player going forward who could approach Jack and Tiger's victory totals. Admittedly, 2024 was impressive, as Scottie Scheffler had an amazing year with 7 wins and an Olympic medal, and Xander Schauffele won 2 majors. Ian, can we confidently say that no player going forward will ever come close to the victory total set by Jack and Tiger?
I don't know whether you can confidently say, because we would often say no one will ever do what Jack Nicklaus did. People would challenge that for a year or two over their careers, through the 80s and 90s, and no one ever did until Tiger came along in 96, hello world, and compiled an impressive run of years himself, and became the best player in the world. Arguably, no one will ever know, is Tiger the best ever? People will say yes. Is Jack the best ever? People will say yes. I've played with both of them. at their peak. I think the game of golf, whoever was the best of any era would be the best in every era. I believe that. I think Ben Hogan would have been the best if he'd played against Jack and played against Tiger, or would have been one of the best, all the way through. Arnold, Gary, Greg, of course, Tom Watson. But if you ask me who's the best player of all time, I would say Tiger Woods. Did Scotty Scheffler have a year equal to a Tiger Woods or a Jack Nicklaus? Yes, this year he did. And last year was pretty special as well. And would he have the opportunity to do it next year? Yes, he's such a good player. Can he do it for the next 10 or 15 years? No one knows. He certainly looks like he can. But we all thought that with Jordan in those 3 majors, nearly 5 majors in that 3-year stretch. As you said, Brooks Koepka with 5 majors, Phil Mickelson with 6. He was certainly a great player for 20 years through Tiger's era. So there's lots of guys that will be great players at the end of the day, Hall of Famers. Whether Scotty can maintain it for another decade to then rival a Tiger, can he put another year up like this year, next year? I believe he can, but there's a lot of pressure on guys like that too. When we start talking about, hey, can you be the next Tiger Woods? I just like the competitive spirit of the game right now. With Xander Schauffele, he's not going to win Player of the Year this year, and he won 2 majors and had an exceptional year.
Amazing, 2 majors and not Player of the Year.
Yeah, just amazing, right? So I love them both too as really strong, solid young men, and good for the game, good for kids.
Yeah. I know you have a good relationship with Jack, and I don't want to cause any grief for you, but let me back up a little bit. I think you just I know eras are different, but did you just give the nod a little bit to Tiger over Jack as possibly the best player in the game?
Yes, I did. I think Tiger was better at not better than Jack at every aspect. Tiger was the best at every aspect of the game. I don't think Jack was. I don't think Jack, mind you, he never missed many greens. I don't think he was a great chipper. I think he was a great iron player, very strong, the longest hitter, great driver, great strategist, thought about the game. All of those traits, Jack and Tiger would be equal. But I think adding them all up together, I would give Tiger the nod. And really the only stat that visibly Jack is ahead of Tiger is in the 18 professional majors compared to 15 professional majors. But if you look at the 2 amateurs that Jack won, Tiger won 3 US juniors and 3 US amateurs, 6 in a row. To me, that's his greatest feat. He won 6 USGA events in 6 years, 3 US juniors, 3 US AMs, and then he won 15 majors. That's pretty impressive, as well as 82 events.
Yeah. I love it. That's good stuff, Ian. We appreciate you sharing that with us. That's really interesting. I hit on something interesting. One of the other great players, 8 majors. Since we kind of have an underlying putting theme, let me just ask you quickly about Tom Watson. So, Tom had 8 majors, totaled 39 tour victories over his career. The New York Times in 2011 reported that Tom once estimated that the yips likely cost him at least 1 major victory a year over a decade of his career, right? So if we do the math, that would be 8 plus another 10 would put him at 18, but obviously, the putting held him back in his opinion.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it's any secret that Tom battled the yips over the course of his career. Would you say ultimately he was, he succeeded in that battle towards the latter part of his career?
I think he suffered from the yips in 2009 when Stuart Sink beat him at the Open in a playoff. I think it was the yips that stopped him from winning that one, certainly. Yeah. I can't think off the top of my head, but I didn't know the figures or any other majors that he could possibly have won if it hadn't been from a missed putt here or there because of the yips. But when he was younger, he was a great putter. He used to grip the putter pretty tight, and he had this quite aggressive rhythm I used to watch Tom a lot. I played with him in '84 in the final round at the British Open when Seve won. We were on the 18th tee watching Seve as he held that putt to win. And he putted very, very well, even with that brisk style. But it was consistent to his game. He had that brisk, get up and hit it quick, which I love, style. And I think that style of putting may have hurt him over the years as he got a little older and a little bit more scar tissue built up. He kind of reminds me a bit of Brandt Snedeker, who also I think now struggles with his putting because of that brisk rap style putting. But yeah, to say that he could have won 10 more if it weren't for the yips, you know, I don't know about that. I think 8's a pretty good total anyway, and a great career, one of the greatest players of all time. And
Right.
I just liked his style of play too. He just got up there and hit it, and always had a smile on his face.
Yeah, no, he was a lot of fun to watch. He really was. You know, it's funny. It seems like back in the day, you know, maybe 70s, 80s, if good players hit tough times in putting, they kind of tended to disappear. And I always thought maybe it was a change in the game, and you would know this pretty well. Chris DeMarco, 1995, comes out with the claw, right? I think Skip
Yeah,
Kendall told him
yeah.
about that, and it really
Chris DeMarco.
resurrected his career. And he went on to play really well after that. And after the claw, we saw the saw. You know, we've got the long anchor putter. We've got the long putters going up the left arm, the long putters going up the right arm. It feels like players, since, you know, they've adapted to more different putting techniques, have kind of, you know, salvaged their careers, and more so earlier in the day. You think that's the case?
Yeah, 100% correct, Chris. In my opinion, back in the '80s, if you went left hand low, the other guys that you were playing against would say, "Oh my God, he's done. This guy's got the yips. He's gone to left hand low." And you know, I would often look at guys and think, "There's no way he can beat me. He's gone left hand low." And that was the only funky way of gripping it back then. There was only 10 different putters for sale in those days anyway, and they were all 35 inches and all pretty much the same. And if you had an issue, you know, just going to left hand low and say 1980, say 40 years ago, that would have been a difficult decision to do, because you knew you were letting the other guys know that you weren't comfortable standard. And then, as you said, all of these Chris DeMarco's claw, you know, Marco Mira did it. He was a great putter. He changed. If you look at it now, I would say more than 50% of the PGA Tour have what I would call an unusual grip.
Wow.
A non-standard grip. They're not putting their hands on the club the same way as they do on a golf club, right?
Mm-hmm.
They put it on left hand low, like a Jordan Spieth. Some have left hand low, bowed left hand, like Jordan, and is a real left hand leader. Some are more natural looking. Some are split hands. Whatever makes you feel comfortable. If you have the yips, or you've not even the yips, just you know, you're feeling a lack of confidence in whatever way, or you feel that right hand's getting a bit skippy and wants to get in there a bit early, like you've had too many coffees in the morning. When that's happening, find a way to just feel comfortable holding the club. And we saw Colin Morikawa, who's a great player. He's won a couple of majors already and contended all year. He has gone to the right hand down the shaft in a different fashion. Tommy Fleetwood, I think, does it extremely well. For someone who putts so well, he also looks different with the hand down, like whether it's the saw or the claw or whatever. I don't think they have any issues with doing that now, and I'm glad that they don't, because it doesn't matter. Just you need to be confident when you putt, and you need to feel comfortable over the putt. So whatever way feels comfortable, I'll change my grip around different ways some days, depending on how I'm feeling, or just to get comfortable over it. Trying to get the left hand in the lifeline, I think, is a good way to get comfortable. Sort of weaken the left hand and get the grip in here in the palm of your left hand. I think that's a really good, comfortable way of being able to putt without feeling you're going to pull it. So yeah, it's really changed. Certainly the last 20 years you've seen the change, but the last 5 years it's more prevalent. And I think it comes, to be honest with you, the green speeds are so crazy now. It's constantly 13 on the stimp meter out on the PGA Tour, and at times they'll double roll and the heat comes in or the wind blows and they'll get to 14 and sometimes even faster than that. I think that helps generate that lack of confidence or that feeling if you don't want the right hand to hit too much, because in the old days you wanted the right hand to hit. The greens were so slow, you wanted to sort of load the putter and give it a pop. Now the last thing you want to do is load the putter.
Wow,
Because
that's it. I've never heard of that. So because just so back in the old day, they were so slow you felt you needed that right hand, but now they're so fast, there's just no place for it. I'd never heard that before.
Yeah, you couldn't putt in the old days left hand. Could not. It's in 19 they did a study almost 50 years ago now of the green speeds of all of the great courses, and Oakmont was 10 point something on the stimp meter. They were the fastest. So 10.5 was considered fast. Now 10.5 is considered muni. Now it's like, oh my God, how do you putt these greens? They're only 10 on the stimp meter. That used to be quick. I grew up on greens that were about 6, Bermuda greens that were just push-up style greens with regular 328 Bermuda on there. And now when you get on greens that are really fast, especially when the wind blows, if they've rolled the greens as well, the ball sort of slides around. It doesn't, there's no nap left in the surface of the putting surface for the ball to hold and to roll true. You know, we talk about true greens. Well, you need some nap for the greens to be true. They roll true to the hole. These days, it's like, you know, the old cliche of putting over the bonnet of a VW Beetle and trying to stop it on the hood. You know, like it's that's how a lot of these greens are these days. And I think that is a part of the lack of confidence and the need for that nice, smooth, silky stroke, however you do it.
Right. No, that's really interesting. Let's hit on something that's pretty important right now. Let me just throw a little bit of information out at you before I actually ask you a question. So in April this year, 36 current tour players were awarded a total of $750 million of tour equity. PGA Tour players are now uniquely positioned as partial owners of the PGA Tour or PGA Tour enterprises. In all other major U.S. sports, it's a more adversarial ownership versus labor model. It begs the question as to whether tour players should now be expected to act more as owners as opposed to straight independent contractors. Over the last several years, we've seen MLB, NFL, and NBA player salaries soar. The numbers are primarily driven by the new television and streaming rights contracts. As a former top 10 ranked player in the world, now a longtime TV analyst, you must have an interesting perspective on this. As a fan, I'd like to see several top players play in each of the non-signature events. Given the importance of television and streaming rights contracts in all the sports, would it be reasonable to expect the top tour players to coordinate scheduling amongst themselves to ensure a high level of participation in all events, with the exception of the fall events? Can the top players be expected to take it amongst themselves and say, hey, you know, for the good of our financial well-being, we need to make sure we've got enough guys playing in all these events?
Boy, we could just do an hour podcast on that question, couldn't we?
Yeah, I think we could. Absolutely.
Yeah. I'll be quick with the answer, really, because there's so many different things going on in the game of golf right now, and the blending of the tours and where we're going in general. That's something that has been discussed for the last 20 years. We've asked the players to play each event on the tour every 4 years. Everyone has to play the John Deere Classic once every 4 years. Or everyone has to play the RBC Canadian Open, one that now gets a good field, but for a long while it didn't because of the date. Some of the smaller tournaments that struggled, usually the ones before a major or following a major, they've always struggled to get the best players because the guys are, you know, trying to do their best to, like the event that was always first after the West Coast swing. Very rarely did it get a very good field because the guys wanted that week off. And then they'd go into Doral and Bay Hill and the Players' Championship, and they'd all be fresh for those three. But the ones surrounding them always struggled to get a field. So the tour wanted the guys before LIV came along to play one of those lesser events. No offense meant to any of them. They're not lesser events. They're great events for the town. They're great events for charity. They raise so much money. Some of them raise $10 million a year. The Valero Texas Open used to run $10 million a year, and it never had a great field. So yes, it would be good if they would all go and play, but at the moment they're all trying to play as often as possible together, which has now created an even greater divide between the secondary events and the elite events. And that's disturbing to me, because we now have created two PGA tours. We've got the haves and the have-nots. And this was all supposed to be to rectify that issue, not to help create it. And just on that point, I'm not a good fan or a big fan of the limited field events where they only have 70 or 72 players and no cut. I think that's ridiculous. The game is built around a cut. And in fact, Jay Monahan said in his speech a couple of weeks ago at the Tour Championship that one of the great things for television was the Friday afternoons and making the cut and the compelling stories. And all of us at CBS feel the same way, CBS announce team, that the field should be at least 96, cut it to 60. You've got a great Friday afternoon story, and those that didn't play well on Thursday, Friday get to practice for the weekend, like I always used to enjoy doing after missing a cut, and then get ready for the next one. So it could be done better, but hey, there's a lot of smarter people than me at the head of all this trying to figure it all out. But as you said, yes, it would be good to see the top players play the lesser events more often, but at the moment they're trying to get the top players to play together more often, and hence the creation of a greater divide.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of moving pieces going on. I said last week in an interview with Mike Breen, the Wall Street Journal is estimating that the top NBA players in 7 to 8 years will be making $100 million a year. Just staggering numbers. And I think, at the end of the day, we know what's driving that for the most part, right? It's the TV contracts, it's the streaming contracts. So there's so many different pieces going on right now. Obviously, you've got Strategic Sports Group, right, comprised of sports franchise owners, private equity executives. They've invested $1.5 billion in the tour earlier this year, and I think they have the option to invest potentially another $1.5 billion. I mean, that's certainly a conversation I'm sure they'd like to have with the players if they haven't already had that conversation. But as you said right now, boy, there's just so many moving pieces going on, and I'm sure the players are trying to figure out where they fit and their schedules. I mean, I thought it was really interesting this year with Scotty Scheffler. I mean, he won the Memorial. He got to the U.S. Open. He didn't look like he had a lot left in the tank. I mean, I think winning the Memorial really took a lot out of him.
Yeah, I think so too. And they've changed that. Jack wasn't happy with that change, and he's now got it back to the week that he wanted it. He didn't want to have the Memorial the week before the US Open. Yeah. So that's been changed. There'll be a lot of changes as this all finds its way. I think the SSG guys in that group jumped in early to get ahead of PIF getting in. And I think they want PIF to come in because they'd like to see those billions of dollars available over there coming into all sports franchises and bolstering the value of all the teams, not just golf. I think it's getting out of hand personally, but hey, I don't want to sound like an old grey-headed retired athlete bitching about the fact they play for more now. The young guys think that it's just fine. So once again, I don't have the answers. I just have a good seat watching it all transpire.
You do, and you do a great job from that CD, and that's for sure.
Thank you.
Speaking of that, Ian, you began your career with ABC and ESPN in 1998, and in 2007 began work with CBS Sports. You become a staple of U.S. golf television. I would suggest that one of the characteristics that has led to your television success is your awesome Australian accent. Over the years, has Americana altered that accent at all, or still all pure Aussie?
I think I say some things. Sometimes my wife will say to me, I'll say, hey, just had a banana. And she say, it's banana. Sometimes just in ordering at a restaurant, I'll say things in an American fashion just to be understood a little better. But I really think without any effort at all, I've retained my Australian accent and demeanor over the years. I've actually lived here more than half my life. So I first started playing the PGA Tour as a 28-year-old in 1989. We moved over. We wanted to play the PGA Tour when we had children. Haley was born in February of 89, and we moved here in March of 89 with a little baby in arms and played the PGA Tour. I was 28-year-old rookie. So we've lived here since then. And if there's no Australian in the race, I'm rooting for the American, but I'm still proudly Australian.
Yeah, no, listen, it's an awesome accent. Comes across really well over the TV. Here's a good one to get your take on this. Rory had a tough year at this year's U.S. Open at Pinehurst, making 3 bogeys over his final 4 holes with 2 putts missed inside 4 feet. There was some debate after the tournament as to whether Rory was better off sticking with his normal, somewhat fast-paced putting routine, which had put him in the lead to begin with, or should he have taken a more deliberate approach with the U.S. Open title on the line? With the deliberate approach being compared to Jack and Tiger's putting routines, where Jack wouldn't hit a putt until he had the right picture in his mind, and we've all heard Tiger talk about not hitting a putt until he could visualize and then putt to the picture. Ian, what's your take? Consistent routine versus deliberate, or maybe a little of both?
Consistent routine. So I'll go. I would never go against my idol, Jack Nicklaus, on anything. I still putt with a glove on because Jack did. I love him. He was awesome, the greatest. And I know he would say no, he'd never even thought about his routine. But if you watched the majority of the time, he had a deliberate routine, but it was still a routine. And he said he never went till he was ready, but he seemed to always be ready at the same time. So Greg Norman too had a deliberate routine, you know, a little shuffle and a little regrip and whatever, and a big breath through the nostrils before he stood up to it. So he may have said he had a deliberate routine, but it was pretty close to 20 seconds every time. I'm more take your time reading the putt. I would take a lot more time stalking the putt, walking around, looking at it from every angle. But once I got into my routine over the ball, it was 13 seconds from when I stood into the shot. When I stood into the putt, everything was 13 seconds the whole time. So I'm a deliberate routine guy. But then, hey, I never got to #1 in the world rankings like a lot of the players have. And Rory's certainly one of the great players of all time. So it's, once again, I'm always hesitant to appear like the expert. I always feel like I'm just giving my opinion. And our great producer of the day, produced me at CBS for 15 years, Lance Barrow, would often say to me, "Hey, you're the expert. Say it like you're the expert." And I try to at times, but I hesitate because there's lots of variables. And these guys wouldn't have got to where they are, which was far and away above where I ever got to. So it's very hard at times to say what I'm saying is correct. I always feel like I'm just giving an opinion. It might be a learned opinion. I do believe I am an expert in following golf. I've been doing it for more than 2 decades, and I played for 2 decades. So I understand the game better than most. But still, there's, as I said, there's a lot of variables, and there's no right or wrong, I don't think.
Yeah. You know, I was a little bit younger, but, you know, for the most part, saw most of Jack's career. And, you know, I obviously remember him making a lot of putts, but, you know, I was in my prime watching Tiger play. And I think you think back to how many times were you watching a major and you're thinking to yourself, all right, if he's going to win this tournament, he has to make this putt, right? And I mean, 3 feet, 4 feet, 7 feet, 8 feet, maybe even 10 feet. I mean, it just feels like 9 out of 10 times Tiger made that putt. I mean, he was just amazing with that.
He was. He was the best. Or maybe Jack was the best. I don't think anyone holed more putts on the 18th green than Jack Nicklaus did. It just seemed like even when he finished his career, he holed the putt on the last hole. Yeah. And you're right. He, even in 77 there at the Open Championship at Turnberry, when he was playing against Tom Watson, Tom hit it into 3 feet. Jack had to hold that 30-footer to make Tom have to hold the 3-footer. And he holed it. And it was like with Tiger winning in, when was that, 08? against Rocco at Torrey Pines at the US Open when he was playing on a broken leg, broken knee, broken leg, whatever it was. He holed that putt on those greens to win, to make the playoff.
Incredible.
And just incredible. That's a wonderful trait of the great champions.
Yeah, yeah. No, and I don't know if we've really seen anything like it since. And maybe that's how you win 15 and 18 majors, when you have to make it, you make it.
Yes.
By the way, interesting on that topic, I spoke to Jim Nance 2 weeks ago, and his take was that on the 18th hole there, Pinehurst, Rory did not choke, and any great player would have made that short little left to right downhill or no more than 5 out of 10 times.
Mm.
I won't ask you to comment on your colleagues' thoughts, but very interesting commentary from Jim on that.
I would, and I know you're not asking me to comment on it, but I would agree with Jim. He didn't choke on that putt. He misread it. It was a very difficult putt. He had to lay. That wasn't a Smiley said, that's a left edge putt. That was a cup out, because he couldn't hit it hard enough to hit it left edge to make that putt. It would have gone 20 foot past. Those greens were exceptionally quick from there. So they're the hardest putts. He didn't yip that or choke on it. He just misread it.
Yeah, other than a really long putt, for a right-handed golfer, short downhill left to righter is probably the most difficult putt. Would you say?
It's not for me, but in general, yes. Yeah, I struggle more on long uphill putts that I have to hit harder. I feel like sometimes I don't get the club to come in squarely because I'm using the right hand a little bit more. And downhill left to righters, yes, are difficult because you have to lay it out there so far. And it's very easy to baby them short low or pull it through the break. There's a couple of ways to get around it. I'll give you a little tip on that.
Like it.
If you start the practice, have a couple of practice strokes on the outside of the ball. So the ball's here, go to the other side with your putter and have the putting stroke looking at the left to right putt, and then step back to the ball to hit it. We always hit the putting stroke from inside the ball and then we step in. Try doing it from the other side of it. So your toes are close to the ball and the putter's outside the ball. Have your practice stroke there looking at the hole and then step back in, and you'll be better on your left to right putts. Interesting.
That's really interesting. So when you step, are you keeping your feet position the same, or do you stepping back as well?
You always step back to get into position. That's a part of the routine. So you're just having a practice stroke there, and then you step back and hit it there. That's just, you just see the left to right better.
Got to give it a try. I mean, it just seems like, you're just so scared. If you miss it on the high side, right, it's never going to stop. It just seems like it's just so easy to kind of bail on those and the head moves. But that's a great tip. We're going to try that one.
Keep your head still. The best tip I can give anyone in putting is, Brad Faxon and I have always been pretty good putters, and we agree on every aspect of the game, the routines, the whole thing. But Brad was always follow the line of the putt with your eyes. And I was always keep your head down, like there's a mark behind your ball and you're going to watch that mark as you hit the ball. So that's the only thing we differ on. I believe if you take out the idea that you're going to miss or the idea that you've got to watch it to go in, if you take out that apprehension by always keeping your head still, I think you'll make a better stroke and less affected by apprehension or nerve than when you have a look. Because to me, when you have a look, that right shoulder comes out and the right hand wants to go. If you keep still, the right hand can still go, but it's going down the line. So that would be the best tip I could give anyone on putting, is not feel like you're keeping your head still. I want you to be relaxed. I just want you to feel like the shoulders are swinging, the arms are swinging, whatever your feel is, but you're just going to watch the putter hit that ball and forget about where it goes. Just hit the ball without looking.
And maybe the person who was best at that was Tiger Woods?
100%. Tiger putted the same as I do. Yeah. Release the putter head. He told me, Finchy, I release the putter head when it gets to the right shoulder. I used to think about it when it got to my sternum, between the right shoulder and chin. I would let the right hand go. He said he used to sometimes feel like he drew his putts, that he was aiming sort of right edge on a 10-foot straight putt and let the hands go. And he was exceptional at keeping his head still without tension. if you say to someone, keep their head still, it immediately creates tension in the shoulders, and then you don't make a very good stroke. So just being relaxed in the neck and the shoulders and feeling like you're in a good, comfortable position, but then I would say divorce yourself from the result. Don't worry about where it goes. I've committed to the line. I've committed to the putt. Now I'm just going to hit the ball. And I think you'll be a better putter if you can do that.
That's awesome. We appreciate that. Let me keep you moving here. Take you back a little bit to your career. When you were struggling with your driving in the latter years of your career, I'm sure that you went through many practice sessions where you felt that you had found something that would carry over to tournament play. But it must have been incredibly difficult to try and implement those changes during live tournament play in front of galleries. I mean, how challenging was it for you?
Yeah, it was tough, and it's why I stepped away from the game. I would hit 50 dead straight drivers on the range and go to the first tee and snap hook it out of bounds. So it just became a mental issue. Yeah. And the more I tried to fix it, and the more coaches I tried to see to fix the problem, the more mental it became, and the worse the other aspects of my game became. So I was a top 10 in the world iron player, chipper, pitcher, putter, everything. And I was a really good driver when I played well. But if you do everything really, really well, but 2 times a day you hit it out of bounds, that's 4 shots. So instead of having a 70 average for the year, in 1995, I had a 74 average for the year. Well, you can't compete with a 74 average. You've got to go find a job. And after missing, I think I missed 26 cuts in a row, 95, 96, I just said, I got to go do something else because I can't fix this mentally. It created injuries. I started with a short right leg and a bad lower back, and it just got worse and worse and worse. And then I started using my shoulders and arms more to create the swing and the speed. So my shoulders went, I had to rehab them. So I had to get injuries fixed anyway at halfway through 96. But realistically, the main problem was really mental. It just became too much to be able to handle. And I was offered the job at ABC to do the TV. So I had about a 1-year transition. It wasn't easy on me or easy on the family, I wouldn't have thought, putting up with my moods, not knowing what was going on. But, I've had 98 to 26 good years of doing the television, and I've enjoyed every minute.
Yeah, no, that is really great. And you may have already answered this next question that I've asked you, but we may alter a little bit. I was basically going to say, between pro-ams and corporate outings, you've seen a lot of amateurs play. What's the best putting tip that you can provide? And you may have already provided that with keeping the head still, right?
Yeah, for sure.
It's funny. I think most people admit golf is a tough game. But I think for the average outsider who'd look at golf and say, well, it looks like putting is the easy part of the game. And it just seems like putting is anything but easy. What makes putting so difficult?
Just your mind gets in the way. Putting should be the easiest. It's not athletic at all. Anyone can do it. Yeah. You just reading the greens can be difficult, but once you learn how to do that through experience, it's really just belief, seeing it go in. The one thing that always amazes me is people have a bad setup. You are in 100% control in every aspect of the game of setting up to the shot correctly. So if you have a really good setup and a really good pre-shot routine, that's 90% of the game, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. And in putting, why not every time you go practice your putting, put a line down, get a mirror, see where your eyes are, see where the ball is, see where the putter head's lined up. Just set up to the putt the same every time, and you'll become a more consistent putter. Get a putter and say that you really like the feel of, I'm going to have this putter for 1 year. I'm not changing putters. I'm going to set up to the putt like this. I'm not going to change that for a year, and just see how you get on. That's what I would do. Alignment is all up to you. It's there's no reason to have poor alignment.
I guess the good and the bad of the game is you have too much time, right? I mean, you're playing basketball, you're playing football, you're reacting, right? I mean, we won't go into my foul shooting, which we had a good laugh.
What was your average?
I will tell that story quickly. We had a great golf game a few years ago with our good friend Mark Loomis, television producer, and Danny Cannell, good friend, NFL quarterback, and we had a couple of beers afterward, and Mark or Danny started laughing and said, "Hey, Chris, tell Ian your Madison Square Garden story." And of course, I didn't want to, but you were certainly intrigued and said, "Yeah, Chris, you got to tell me." So the bottom line was that a freshman at Iona went to the foul line, 19,000 plus in Madison Square Garden, and I shot an air ball, and was serenaded by most of the people in Madison Square Garden with air balls. So we definitely had a good laugh, and but that's the nature of it, right? I mean, a lot of guys struggle with foul shooting, right? Because you're not reacting. You're sitting there, you have time to think about it. Some of the great players in the game have struggled with foul shooting. So yeah, we had a good laugh with it that day. It's funny how Danny and Mark take such amusement out of my hardships in life, isn't it, Ian?
Well, they have no idea. I was laughing with you, having been through it myself. So, Mark and Danny, you should have more respect for Chris, because that wasn't an easy shot you had to make in front of 19,000 people. I get it, mate.
Well, let me tell you, from 15 feet away for not drawing iron, I probably deserved every bit of that air ball chance. If I wasn't a freshman, I would have been smarter and banked it. At least gotten something there. But
yeah,
we had a lot of fun. I'll let you get going. I'll hit you with one quick one. I can only imagine how special it is for you to return to Augusta National each spring. Do you have a favorite hole at Augusta?
Wow, they're all favorites because I love the place, and it's just so beautifully presented every year. Start of spring. It's just an amazing place, and I like the fact that we go back to the same venue every year. Everyone knows Augusta National. CBS comes on, we play the music. Jim Nance says, "Hello, friends. Here we go. We're at the Masters." It's like, it's like old home week, right? You sit down in front of the fire and watch the golf. And Augusta brings that feel to me when I go back there, and when I have the opportunity to play on occasion, and I've played there many times in my career. To come up with a favorite hole, they're all beautiful. You know what? For a short par four, I think the third is a really good hole. The big hitters these days drive it and challenge the hole, and still four is a good score. Some may even sometimes drive it on the green, but still four is a good score. And it's a hole that I would always hit a 2-iron off the tee and a wedge, or sometimes a baby 9-iron to control the spin a little bit so it didn't spin back off the front bank. But just getting it on the green in 2 is good. So I love that. I love short par fours. And I think that one really challenges every type of player, but it gives the average player a chance of a birdie if you hit a good shot, because it's not a long hole.
Yeah, and you would know, it seems like when the pin is in the front of that green, it's just really tough. Is that really the toughest pin, is when it's in the front there?
Yeah, front left. Yes. Because if you fly it into the pin with spin, to keep it on that little isthmus of green that comes down there to the left, you can spin it off the front, and then you make 5, unless you're Scotty Scheffler and you chip it in.
That was amazing, right? It looked like
right.
he was in trouble that day, and sure enough, he chips it in. That was incredible.
Right. Or it goes a little long, and then you can chip it off the front with your next chip. It's just you're probably better off going 30 feet long right with spin and trying to spin it down towards the cup a little bit, and leaving yourself that inside 20-foot putt for birdie. And then if you hit a really good one and it gets within 10 feet, that's a bonus. But it's just one of those holes that challenges every style of play.
Yeah, that's great. We appreciate it. Ian, awesome. I'll close by saying you deserve an enormous amount of credit for making such a successful transition to golf television after enduring really one of the tougher exits from the highest level of tour play. Thanks so much for joining me today on Questions for Cancer Research. It's been great to catch up. I wish you and your family all the best. And the same to you, Chris. All the best to you and your family, and on this initiative. I think it's a wonderful, wonderful job you're doing. Thanks so much. Have a great day. We got a few things going on. Best of luck with everything up there. Thanks, mate. All right, Ian, take care. You too, Chris.